Hey, what is up, friends? It's Andy and Kat, and today we're going to do a follow-up on a previous episode where we were talking about creativity and how doing different things that you would otherwise not do, like not even expect yourself to do, can really create new synapses in your brain and give you, I mean, ultimately, the outcome is that you have an open mind. But really, what's going on is you're literally creating new synapses in your brain.
Yes. Yes. I think we started talking about this on the previous episode that we did together, where you were talking about working on parkour, that your son was doing parkour, and then you started to do it yourself, and some of the
Yeah.
activities that you have done, and how you that it wasn't just that, yeah, the benefits that came from it. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
think
yeah.
this.
So exactly. So two keys that I want to bring up. The first is active participation, right? And you and I were just discussing sort of the preamble before we actually came on air, is that it's one thing to participate in something as a spectator, right? Like to witness something new. And certainly that's going to have an impact on your mind as well because you're literally like experiencing something new. But it's another thing to experience it kinetically, right? And you and I both know that when you learn something, I mean, different people learn things different ways, but when you learn something, when you are able to participate in it kinetically, it's that much quicker and you absorb it that much more.
That's right. Yeah, and I think that one of the interesting thing about learning is, um, and I think for consultants, I think one of the challenges for people who are consultants is the fact that the career can become all consuming if someone lets it, and so it can consume every moment. Now let's put things in perspective here. When Kat and I both started in consulting, um, there wasn't the access to the client's environments like we have today. And typically people communicate through email or face to face. Now, with instant message, with texting, with access to environments, um, cloud access, you can access your work really from anywhere in the world at any time and on
Hmm.
multiple devices. So, when we were shut down, like when we first started, it was something where somebody actually had to put in a little bit of extra work to try to access these things. But as time has gone on, you could work 24/7. Of course, you can't work 24/7, but you could work all the time if you wanted to. And so it's really important to have that those external interests that are, like we said, that are not.
That are
um,
offsetting.
that's right. Yes, that's right. Because and there's a and you pointed it out. One of the things is it develops new learning pathways, and some things that maybe can seem like you doing parkour somebody could say, well, what does parkour have to do with consulting? But you develop these different skills, the different ways of learning. You bring that skill back into what you do when you're actually consulting, and it actually well rounds that consultant to be able to provide better services for sure.
Yeah. I just had a good visual doing parkour in the office. Let's bring that into consulting, teaching everybody to do flips.
Well, and some of it's also like learning, like anybody who has a child in sports, or if they've played different sports or activities, shouldn't say just sports, but let's say someone played football. I'm talking like American football, tackle football. Those coaches are different than, let's say, a drama teacher.
Hmm.
Now there might be some similarities around frustration or how they communicate, but you're going to find that different activities have different styles of coaching or different styles of teaching. And we have that in business. When we go to a client, uh, a government client, is probably going to have different sort of management styles than
Yes.
oil and gas or engineering or construction.
100%.
And so knowing how to work through that and understand that, well, in fact, it's funny. I'll share a quick story. When I was doing my CMA, which is now the CPA, we had to do a lot of case studies, and so you had to present your case study, and the person they would have these moderators in these sessions that would role play. So the person was role playing that they were the CEO of this company, and I won't use the person's name, but let's say his name was Alfred. Alfred just tore us apart, tore me, like our whole group apart, right? Was really, really firm. Now, there was somebody in our group who worked for a pseudo government organization, and she was quite upset after this. And she said, managers don't talk like that. Managers don't communicate to people like that. And I said, well, I've seen them
Actually,
communicate
they
like that.
do.
Yeah. And then she kept pushing and saying, no, they don't. And I say, well, maybe in your organization they don't, but in mine they do. And if, as a consultant, if I was to present what we presented and we weren't prepared, like that was the truth, our clients would tear us apart. Now, there was
Mm-hmm.
varying levels of tearing somebody apart, but clients will. And it's important for people to learn how to respect, each other, but understand that when we're servicing a client or we're providing services for a client, they all have different ways of communicating, and there's just different cultures within these organizations, and we learn that through, and we can learn that through different activities that we do, because there's just different
Yeah.
styles of coaching.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I like how you brought this up because it's not just about the coaching and the organizational styles of people or of leadership or like your clients in certain organizations, but part of one of the X factors that I have determined in my career in consulting is that the most successful consultants are ones that can pivot very easily. And so it's like if you're going to be in this industry, you're not going to be doing the same job for a long time. Like we're not even talking, sometimes it's only a few months. Sometimes it could be a year, sometimes it could be several years. But even within those several years, even if you're at that same client for that whole entire period of time, you're likely going to be called to do something that you've never done before. And the worst thing, like if you want a suicide mission in consulting, you would say, well, it's not my job. I don't do that, right? Like if you
Yes.
want to have opportunity, you say yes, and then you figure out how to do it. So pivoting, being able to pivot quickly in consulting will bring you a long and fruitful career. Now, how to pivot easily, well, that's what we're talking about right here. That's where you need to develop an open mind in and see possibility where others perhaps do not see possibility. That's where your advantage is.
Yes. I couldn't have said it better at that. And I think when we are in consulting, we often get a lot of tunnel vision and
Mm,
around saying, oh, this is what I do, and this is the way I've done it. This is the way I've been trained to do it. And that benefit of actually doing those having external activities where somebody can, where you can uh, learn different skills, is that one, you can bring that in, but one, you've also taught yourself that you can learn different skills or you can do things that you haven't done
mhm.
before. So, if somebody, let's say, has never gone fishing, and they go, well, I don't know anything about fishing. Well, just go and learn, right? Go to a fishing store and ask them questions. That's what they're there for. And
Yeah.
and then you go figure it out. And then you go fishing and you don't know what you're doing. You ask somebody who's actually on the shore, and you ask them questions, and you go try it. And that's where we build in these skills to realize. I mean, we talk a lot about growth mindset and fixed mindset, and I don't know if we talked about this last time, but a lot of times people they'll talk about absolutes, and they'll think, well, I have a growth mindset, right? That guy's got a fixed mindset. Well, most people don't have
It's
only a
not
growth
so
mindset or a
clear
fixed
cut.
mindset. Yeah, it's like we've got growth mindsets in some areas and fixed mindsets in others. We restrict ourselves in in a particular area. Sometimes we say I can't do that. Those are the things that indicate that. But you think about even somebody who is really limited, who really you look at and say this guy's got a real fixed mindset. I know somebody who's got what I would describe as a very strong fixed mindset. Yet that person is very spontaneous, will go out and do things that they shouldn't be doing. So then in some areas, I'm like, well, the person really has a growth mindset because the person has no limitations in other areas of their life. Now, it's important to say, hey, look, you need to put some structure in areas that you shouldn't be doing and focus more and bring that open-mindedness into areas that is going to serve you. But really, it comes down to being able to learn those skills and say, look, I can actually keep growing. And you're right, it happens when we're participating and we're active,
Mm-hmm.
not just when we're a spectator. And it doesn't mean necessarily we have to crawl up a wall or something like that, or there's certain things that could be involved with coaching, could be involved with teaching, could be involved with charitable programs. There's a lot of things we can do to start to learn those skills.
Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't it Steve Jobs that said who said the what was it? It was like innovation is the cross section between technology and design. I think that's what it is. And so I mean, when I say this to you, you'd be like, well, of course, now it's a common sense that that's innovation, right? You create something new. But the fact of the matter is, he bridged together two completely separate um, areas, right? Technology and art.
Mhm.
And if you read, I remember reading his biography, and he took in college, when he was in college, he would take these courses that were just of pure interest to him. So I think one of them was like fonts or
Yeah,
calligraphy, or I don't
calligraphy.
remember,
Yes.
calligraphy, yeah.
Yeah.
And so he would learn to write this beautiful, he'd have beautiful penmanship that at first at first thought you'd be like, well, you're never going to use that in real life, right? But then later on, when they were working on the Mac turned out to be the first computer that introduced beautiful font, right? Like different types of font, because prior to that, it was just really all very DOS based. Does anybody remember what DOS means even?
Yeah. Dirty operating system.
Yeah, right.
That's what it means.
Dirty operating system?
That's
You're
what it means. Yeah.
joking.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was
no, no, no.
QDOS.
It's not. It's disk operating system.
Yeah. QDOS means quick and dirty operating system.
Hilarious. I can't tell
Let's
if
just
you're
double
joking or
check.
not.
Let's just double check that.
My money's on no. In any case, open mind. Open mind requires
Oh,
you
it did.
to.
It does mean disk operating system. Yeah. But let's see what quick QDOS means.
Okay, you go do that. Well, I'll go
Yeah.
continue talking about open mind. See the
Yeah.
curiosity.
Quick and
I
dirty operating
applaud your.
system. So
Oh, there you go.
yeah,
So you're both
QDOS
right.
means quick. Yeah, QDOS means quick and dirty operating system, which I think Microsoft took the DOS operating system and then kind of rewrote parts of it. If I could be completely wrong with that, but anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
In any case, having an open mind, involves doing exactly what Andy just did. Being curious and acting on that curiosity. Very often, we will have curiosities, and I don't know about you, Andy, but I will often say to myself, "Oh, I don't have time right now. I'll set it aside and I'll look it up later on." But then I never end up looking it up because I either forget or like I'm not interested anymore, right? So part of the deal is to act when you have that inspiration. Now, it's not to say that, if you do that all the time, if you let it take over your life, you'll never get anything done, right?
Yes.
But there's an element of, you're inspired to do something, now just go and do it. You're inspired to try this new food, now just go and do it. You want to have breakthrough in something that you've never done before, listen to the cues around you in your environment, and go and do it, right?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And I think that we know that, well, again, we've talked about this before about us being electrical matter. So, we're electrical matter, and we are picking up signals constantly. We don't question. I mean, again, we're talking about a radio. Probably, I don't know if anybody's even listened to a radio in years, but if the way the radio used to dial, right? You have a dial and you have it in our car, but it's pretty electronic now. But a radio would dial, and if it was on a particular station, right, you'd get 97.5, you'd get whatever was on 97.5. If you went to 7.9, it would be static because there was nothing sending a signal at that, and they had certain rules around bands and how they would send those signals. But I mean, of course, people always use the example. They say that if you're on the AM frequency and you're on 58 5800 or whatever the frequency is, you can't get angry if that's what the music you're listening to. You need to change the channel,
Change
right?
the frequency, right?
Change the frequency, right? And I think as human beings, we are, we're this electrical matter that we're picking up these frequencies. And I realized I started to just accept the fact that when things came my way, I would just start to go research it, or I'd write it down, or I'd go find out about it. Because, somebody would be talking about a book, and then I realized if I waited, it may be another 3 or 4 months, and that book would come up, or that thought or that theory would come up again. And I'm better off just to accept it, that it's flowing my way, go find out about it, and figure out if it's something that I want to put in practice, or if it's just more interesting or what. And you're right, it's sort of a balancing act, right? Because we can't be like searching on Instagram where we're just spinning through,
Course. Yeah.
and it's sort of like we have to be selective. And I think that's where the narrowing and focusing that radio dial to what we're looking for, and being very conscious of what we're doing. And that's where I think the active part comes in, because when we're passive, if we're to sit and go watch a sports game, let's say we're going to go watch, I mean, baseball is a great game for this. Go watch a baseball game and sit in the stands, and you might, watch a play, you might look away, you might talk to, like, people are, you're looking at a couple down the aisle. There's lots of distractions, right? The game is methodical, it's somewhat slow. It's not like hockey or basketball where this constantly kind of plays, and you can get distracted. I think life is very much like baseball, where we do have these gaps of time, and we need to figure out where are we focusing. The thing is that rather than watching and being a spectator, it's really about saying, how do I get down on the field and play and participate in some manner, right? And then learn it, really learn it firsthand as best as I can.
Yeah, I actually, that's a really good point. I kind of reminds me of a book that I had read somewhat recently in the past number of months. It's called The Art of the Impossible, and I don't remember if I actually shared this with you. I think I did. It's by a guy named Stephen Kotler, who wrote The Rise of Superman. So he likes to write about flow, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone, that you're in flow when you're doing an activity, that you are so absorbed in that activity that all sense of time seems to dissolve. And there is nothing else in the universe but that for you at that point in time, at that point, right? So the book is called The Art of the Impossible. And this guy, Stephen Kotler, he's a journalist. He made a name for himself in interviewing and seeking to understand these elite athletes, and not just athletes. Like, he started with athletes in extreme sports, surfing, snowboarding, whatever have you, the X Games, blah. And then he sort of expanded that to people, anybody who basically excels in their industry. A sidebar, he actually did a number of books with a guy named Peter Diamandis, who's a futurist of sorts, right? In any case, The Art of the Impossible, in this book, he actually shares how one can get into flow and how to find the passions in your life that you would, that you can achieve, or push yourself to achieve this whatever this high caliber, whatever this is the skill is, right? And to in doing that, to get started with that, there are a couple steps that he recommends. And I invite you, anybody who's listening to this, if you want to find something that you can just like experience that flow and try something that's completely new and open that really, really you're interested in, or like finding that thing that just brings bliss, this is what you should do. Step one, you're going to make a list of the top 25 things that you're interested in, just interested in, that you're curious about, like you have a question, and it could be all sorts. So one of the examples were like, I'm curious to know how insects, crickets, make music. Okay, so that's something that you're interested in, curious. And it doesn't even have to be like, oh, I'm going to do I'm going to go to school in entomology and figure out what blah, blah, blah. No, no, it's not. It's just you are curious about this particular question. Okay, write it down. And then you might be curious about how football, NFL players train. I don't know, right? So you keep on doing this, and then what happens is step number two is that you sort of form different linkages and different possibilities. So you might be like, okay, well, I'm interested in why insects, or no, how these crickets make music. Then I'm also interested in NFL, how people train. And perhaps you can meld the two together to say, huh, well, how can insects help people train? And keep asking yourself these questions based upon these two areas that you're even remotely interested in, you know?
Mhm.
And then it might actually even evolve into, gee, maybe I can use crickets as a source of protein to enhance the training or the nutrition for athletes while they're training. Do you know what I mean? So it's like an evolution, and that's the innovation, right? That's the
Yes.
intersection of two very completely independent areas.
Mhm. Yes.
But that would have
Yeah.
never come about if you didn't have an open mind,
Right. No,
right?
not at all. Not at all. And I think, yeah, and I like that example because if you watch how kids play, kids are, children are basically the epitome of that, right? They just go and play and um they make up games, they make up
Yeah.
characters,
Yeah.
and and then the game morphs from one to another, especially if they are just playing. Um, this is if you have like if you have somebody who's trying to control the play, be it another kid or a parent, um, it doesn't flow. It doesn't work. Because what happens is now you're putting really restrictions and you're
Yeah.
on the what those children can do. But if you watch kids play, um, yeah, they just figure it out. And I know we can't just kind of let people run hog wild, like especially children. There are things that you have to be aware of, but typically, children, if you watch them play, it's fairly safe, and they kind of just let it go, and they just kind of figure it out, and they make up new games, and they make up new characters, and they figure out how to do things. And in fact, a lot of like athletic type of behavior, or even acting, music even, the kids learn it through play. Like it isn't
Yeah.
just practicing. It like people with like, if we think of how even practice comes about, most people, if I was to say go practice something, they would probably picture a formal practice. That's even what I have in my head, where you've got a coach, you've got somebody hitting balls, or structuring things out, versus letting it just kind of happen, right? How do you learn these skills and just let it kind of go, let it happen? And I think that's really where what you're talking about as well, where you're interested in crickets, you're interested in football, go figure it, like just go learn it, and
Yeah.
and then it doesn't have to be that you're trying to produce an end product. It's just you want to learn it for learning's sake.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so if we were to wrap up with three actionable items for anybody who's listening who wants to embark on your journey of open mind without the use of chemicals, because that's always an
um,
option.
it is, yes. I think one thing I think is uh, participating in the event in some manner, not being just
Mm,
a not just being a spectator. And I know the participation can vary based on what somebody's physical abilities are or what they're but being able to participate at some level in the activity where they're actually learning. And I think that's probably key, because I don't think we can learn by watching, but we
it's a
definitely learn better
combination.
by doing. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
combination for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so active participation, kinetic participation, that's definitely action one.
Yes.
So I would throw in, oh, I had it on the tip of my tongue and now I forgot what it was. Ah, oh, okay. I would throw in the attitude of not really trying to do it well. Do you know? Like a lot of
Yeah.
people, especially when I was teaching fitness, I'd do this, balancing move, and then people were like, "Oh, I'm terrible at balance." But I mean, that's the point. Like
Yep.
you're doing balancing moves to practice so that you can get better at balancing. You don't actually a prerequisite of balancing well is not required.
Yes.
So don't really worry about doing the thing well or looking great at, at doing whatever it is. Active participation without expectation.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. And I like that idea. And I'm just going to add something. My son, when he played hockey and he started doing some like clinic type works where there would be, lots of um, kids on the ice, and the ages varied from 8 to like 18. And there could have been even like some low level professionals out there, but typically it was 18 and under. And the coach, they ran drills that were very complicated. And I had talked to the guy who ran the program, and I said, like, how do these kids learn these drills? And he said, I don't expect, a 10-year-old who's never done these to be able to do them right. I expect them actually to make mistakes. I don't expect a 17-year-old who has never been in the program to know the drills, but I am expecting the 16-year-old who's done it for 8 years to know what we're expecting. And what he says is he coaches to the highest level, and
Mm,
everybody else just, you go and you do your best at really trying to mimic what we say and what you see, knowing that you're not going to be perfect. But over the course of years, you're going to understand the drills, you're going to understand the activity, and that drill feeds into other skills. And I think,
hmm
and even for yourself, like when you're teaching fitness, you might have you might have a 17-year-old in there who gets it like that, right? And you might
hmm
have a 37-year-old who might be very athletic who doesn't get it, right? And
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter. The chronological age doesn't matter, or how much somebody says, well, I was a dancer and I just can't get this thing down, or I was a hockey player and I can't get this. So it doesn't matter, right? You just go and you do it, and eventually you'll do it, and you do it the best with the best of
hmm
your ability. So I like
hmm
that. I like that statement of not worrying about how you look and just trying.
Yep.
That's, I think, a big thing. So
And
yeah.
what's the final thing, do you think?
I think the final thing is really how you probably wrapped it up with going in and researching the things that you're interested in. I think that
Hmm
finding the things that you're passionate about, and I think many of us, I think, I don't know if I said many. Okay, that's probably a harsh thing, but lots of us have buried our interests, that we were interested in as teenagers or young adults.
hmm
We buried those in the the approach to making an income and having a great career,
Yeah.
and maybe, like you said, looking good, because we need to keep up an appearance.
Yeah.
And I think going and saying, I was always interested in cars. I want to go find out about cars, or I'm always interested in whatever. And I'm really happy you brought that up, because I've had conversations with people. I remember one guy said, I always wanted to know how to cut meat. One guy said, and I'm thinking, it's interesting, because you go, like, who would want to know how to cut meat? But I'm like, well, I can't judge the guy wanting to know how to cut meat, right? And I said, well, go like volunteer at a butcher shop, right? Or go
Yeah.
find somebody who, after hunting season, who needs help because they've got, a bunch of deer or a bunch of moose that come in, and they have to
prepare it.
butcher
Yeah.
them up, prepare them, yeah. And but it was interesting because this person wanted to learn that, and it was something that they was on their mind, which seems strange probably to most people, but there's people who want to learn all kinds of things, right? And there's all sorts of interests out there that people have. So
I
I'm
mean,
not
it's
judging
a
anybody who
legitimate job.
It is, and I knew
Great to
people
become
who
a butcher.
Oh, absolutely. I knew guys who actually were meat cutters, and they loved it. I mean, they always had lots of work. They were good at what they did. And so it's interesting because when he said that, I thought, wow, like, I mean, I guess it's not something I'm
Never thought
interested
about
in,
that. Yeah.
but yeah, but I could understand why somebody would. And there's a lot of reasons why somebody would want to do that. So anyways, but yeah, I think finding the things you're interested in, and yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a really useful skill to have.
It is. It is. And actually, it's funny because I remember reading, they talked about, and I don't know what these statistics are because I read it quite some time ago, around that meat cutters and butchers are like the average age or the median age is really high. Because they really, they just haven't done it. And if you think of, our age,
age.
I don't know any. Yeah, my age. There's not a lot of people who've gone into it, right? And so, but it makes sense, right? Somebody who's interested in it, they might even find a career. But it's really about just finding that interest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, not everything has to be a career. I mean, it just sometimes it's just for fun and it just makes you happy.
Yes.